That's simple. Is typing video really possible? Not really. I mean, because look, I've said it before and I'll say it again. To get a real typing of somebody requires me to have a conversation with them, to ask them questions, to be able to follow up on their answers, to pull on things and see how much of a function it gets displayed or doesn't, how much of a function deficit perhaps gets displayed, things like that.
I have more of it. I'm not gonna lie. I have more intuitive. Like, I know people here. Oprah is an ENFJ. She's not an INFJ. This is what I'm talking about. Is that nowadays the typology community is so fucked up that the standard versions of those types, so ENFJ for Oprah, are now being questioned to INFJ, and now people are like, okay, well, what type am I? So it's messed up.
All right. Well, look, the thing is, it's a good environment for me to be operating in. And one of the things I can do is types of celebrities and give this disclaimer at the same time. Rachel points out that she has much more of an intuitive sort of seizing upon a person's type, whereas I am ignoring NI, which means I don't trust my NI. I don't trust my gut instincts on things. I want to go through the motions of actually parsing it out and being objectively self-critical and critical of their answers and critical of my conclusions and critical of everything until I feel like the NI eventually comes down and it's 100%. It comes down. No, it doesn't work that way, Bro G. It doesn't work that way. It just doesn't. It's weird. It's like it doesn't matter how undervalued TI is in a person's home. If they're a TI DOM or a TI tool user, they'll be excellent at it. That's it. Because it's not something they bust out, right? They're using it constantly to parse out the logic of the words that people are saying.
TI?
Yeah. The TI DOMs, regardless of what home they're in, regardless of how they were raised, they're using it constantly to find inconsistencies, to assume words mean what they say, rather than are attempts by people to say what they mean. So yeah, the great thing about the TI test is it really is foolproof. You cannot pass it if you are TI polar. You cannot hide it. If I test you for 15 or 20 minutes, you definitely cannot hide where your TI is. I will be able to pick it out. People don't like being tested for TI. That's why I don't typically do that.
I was nervous.
People hate it.
I was hoping you weren't going to.
So I tend to just ask a couple of quick questions. Now, TI DOMs love being tested for TI. I could test them all day and they'd be happy to just do it. TI tool users love being tested for TI. But everybody else doesn't. But you measure it with conditional logic questions, be they genealogy, be they process of elimination, be they well, I mean, okay. So Burlg, if we were to standardize it in some way that would be more usable as data, we would need to establish exactly where the baseline for each of these things is. No, you're wrong, Burlg. There is a spectrum, right? A spectrum of responses. Now, you might say there's an inadequately clear, bright line to distinguish between, say, first and second. There's an inadequately bright line to distinguish between fourth and fifth. I would agree with you there. That's why I don't use it for that. I use it mostly to eliminate the possibility of TI polar. If somebody is very poor in TI, then they're fourth or seventh. And that's it. I mean, it just works out that way. When you say this method is not accurate, you are wrong. Because what's the question you should have asked first? So how do you use this metric in typing somebody? What is the job? How do you operationalize it? Okay? No, it's not under the false presumption that TI is understood under my test. You're wrong. What I'm saying is our job with cognitive functions is to do things like parse out what's the distinction between conditional logic thinking and, say, emotional logic thinking. It's a taxonomy as well, Burlg. I can't prove those statements. Burlg, those aren't the sort of statements one proves. There's a difference between statements like, I have a lighter in my hand, which one can prove with showing you something, and statements like, here's a taxonomy with a perfectly good logic to explain what cognitive functions are supposed to explain. There's a conventional understanding of the things. My understanding is consistent with those, except mine is better because mine can be simulatable. I've operationalized all the terms. I've drawn all the necessary distinctions, and I've done it consistent with a model as people normally do models. So the fact that it's imperfect, Burl G, well, I mean, I get that you just hate the living shit out of me for having figured this shit out, but I did. Sorry.
So how long have you studied cognitive functions? Like, what made you go into that?
It started with YouTube. It's like I started making videos. I made one video about cognitive functions, and it did better than the others. I started researching it, and I started thinking about it a lot. I've made 2 models that I had to scrap already because they were wrong. Because people called me out on shit. They said, this doesn't work, this doesn't work. I had to scrap it. I had one called Kerf, I had to scrap it. I had a second one, I had to scrap it. Why? Because my goal is being right. So I'm objectively self-critical, and I'm critical of my model. And so that's why I'm right. That's why I'm the one who figured it out. I'm a debate coach. I know how to build a case.
Shreddy.
In fact, I'm not just a debate coach. I'm probably one of the best debate coaches in the country.
Yeah, I mean,
I won Schools of Excellence awards year after year at nationals. I got national champions. I got like 4 of them, something like that. I don't remember. A state champion.
That's great. That is something to be.
I know what the fuck I'm doing. You're talking about building a case for something to construct an argument that says this is as airtight a case as I can possibly make it, in terms of both explaining what we're supposed to explain, taxonomy and what we're supposed to taxonomy, modeling what we're supposed to model, and distinguishing between the 3, and distinguishing between different ways that we can establish correlations, values, process analyses, etc., and to build an actual, to do a serious job. Like somebody like Burl G, they're not doing a serious job. He comes in here and says, "You're wrong because yeah." The hate that drips from him is obvious. You cannot stand in the same room with the farts that I left behind intellectually, and you are driven crazy by this. I want you to just sniff them all deep up into your nose, Burl. Okay? Smell their gamey, rich, farty goodness.